of all, I think it is undoubtedly true, and I think we probably all in this room would totally agree, that there have been moral standards that have been so laxed in our society that they have become acceptable, and that this is not a good thing. Okay? I think we all would agree with that. And it's not that we say it's acceptable, but we're not talking about it in church, we're not fighting for it, we're not getting upset about it. I'm thinking of things like pornography on the internet. I mean, that's one of them I'd like to take on, because I think that just destroys people's lives. It causes all kinds of marriage problems. It's bad, it's wrong, there's nothing that's good that can come from it, and yet it's out there, and I'm preaching to myself. I'm just as guilty as anyone else. None of us are standing up, going to our congressman saying, shut it down, get rid of it, whatever. I mean, whatever needs to be done. So there's some of that that's going on, for sure. All right? And I think we could all agree, too, that we do kind of pick and choose what things we choose to get upset about. All right? So one example that I'm sure can hit home with probably almost everybody. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, perhaps when I was getting ready to get married, that it was very, very controversial for a couple to live together before they got married. Okay, that was pretty shameful. I would never have thought about doing that. I knew my parents would not approve, society would not approve, and I just wouldn't have done it. But now it happens all the time. I would say lots of couples that we all see for premarital counseling have lived together, and perhaps that's not so bad. I mean, whatever we say, I don't mean to get into a conversation about that, but nevertheless, I think it's an example of how we've changed over time. Okay, how things have changed. All right, and my own daughter did that, and we had our issues with it, but it happened, and so forth. And she ended up getting married actually to a different guy than she lived with, which was very awkward, but nevertheless, it happened. And then there's just lots of other issues that we could choose that I think are morally repugnant, mean-spiritedness, and partisan politics. I mean, you could all name a litany of things that are upsetting. We're not really. But I think the one thing I do think is false is that somehow, whether you're more literal about the Bible or more so-called liberal about the Bible, I don't think there's any moral equivalent to those views. And what I mean by that is I don't think that if you have a real liberal point of view of the Bible, whatever that might mean, and we can maybe discuss that in the weeks to come, I don't think that means that you're going to be a less moral person. Okay? Nor do I believe that if you're a fundamentalist Christian who strongly disagrees with some of the things that I might agree with, you're going to behave any more morally either. And in fact, we can think of examples on both sides, can't we? Of everything from the fundamentalist preacher on TV who's built people of millions of dollars and done all kinds of shameful things, to a super liberal person who's done all kinds of creepy things too. So, I don't think there's any kind of correlation between your view of the Bible and how you process the Bible and I think Christians of integrity who take the Bible seriously, who have differing opinions, I think that doesn't mean that there's a slippery slope and that somehow you're going to go off and just be lost and do horrible things. I think that's just wrong thinking, and that's a weird way of finishing up my lecture, but that's where my notes ended. And I would like to just stop there and maybe see about any comments or questions. We've got 20 minutes. Yes?
And I'm not in favor of this, and I'm sick. We'll agree to talk back and forth about it. But
I wonder if I should have passed this now, because I don't think people are going to be able to hear. You don't have to stand if you don't want to.
I have written a letter, and I'm not in favor of this decision, but I do want to hear both sides, and I appreciate you all telling us where you've come from, because when I first saw that this was going to be here, you know, my thing was, why wasn't this done before the vote? But it changed a little bit when you said, we're here to tell you where we arrived at our decisions. So one thing, I think that we have to be careful not to argue from the point that Paul or Jesus said nothing about homosexuality in the Bible. He didn't say it about a lot of other things either. So I just caution us to do that, because, you know, the example I'm going to use, he didn't say anything about incest. So,
Right.
is that okay?
But my comment was strictly to the idea of a monogamous relationship. I think a lot of the, maybe I should take this back.
Yeah.
I think it has been verified very well by New Testament scholars of conservative, liberal, and everything in between, that the issues that Paul was dealing with, while they did undoubtedly deal with homosexuality, were of a particular type of homosexuality that was rampant in the Greco-Roman world. And I think I need to not speak about that, because I think that's those are the kind of issues that Sid's going to get into in the third class. Yes. So, but I do see your point. We should never try to say there's nothing in the Bible when there is. I mean, you can tell me the passages, and they're there, and we can't ignore them. Yes.
The point about that too is that too much sameness, too much likeness. The reason we don't accept incest is because of too much genetics. And to follow along that line is why I'm opposed to this, is too much sameness, too much likeness. That's why we don't appreciate man-made idols. It's too much like myself. I set up my own idols. And that's my point.
I'm sorry, I hope I'm not arguing about that.
Okay, no, we wanted to have an open discussion.
I think we
Me,
need
or
to-
did someone else want to speak over here? No? Okay. Did you have something
I
else?
just said I
Okay.
think it's important to see both sides.
Of course. That's the whole point. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we had, yes.
That is really a question. I'm more interested in when and why in the 1920s or whenever it was that I was not raised a Presbyterian. What happened that moved Presbyterians from a real conservative place to another? And what happened? I mean, I also didn't know too much about the split of the church.
Okay. I don't know a lot about that. I have a whole book about it in my office that I haven't read. But what I do know is that biblical criticism, as it's called, which is not a good word because it sounds like you're criticizing, but it's biblical analysis or whatever, really began around the time of the Civil War. And I think it was this guy Briggs who was the genius of this, who got in a lot of trouble with the church over those years. And I'm moving around, sorry.
No, you're fine. I got it.
But the Princeton professors, Charles Hodge, Archibald Alexander, Benjamin Warfield, some of these guys who were systematic theologians, really wanted to carry on this belief that the Bible was inerrant in the sense that there weren't any mistakes in it, there were no things that you could claim to be, I guess, culturally biased, though I don't really know how they dealt with things like polygamy or slavery or issues like that, dietary laws. But somehow they were so strong in their arguments that that was the compelling belief that carried on. And I think finally by the 20s, there were enough seminarians coming out of school who had studied these newer methods of studying the Bible that at one of the General Assemblies they got together and created a new document opening the door for some new approaches to looking at the Scriptures. That's basically all I know about it. Well, there's nothing that says we have to keep meeting until 10:30. So, but I don't want to rush anybody. Yes?
I'm Dan Goley, and current member of session, and was on the same gender subcommittee. And having that role, I heard quite passionately from people on both sides of this issue in private. Some of them very good friends of mine. I'm playing golf with one of them today at 1 o'clock. And I'm comfortable enough to spend 4 hours with a man with 14 metal clubs in his bag after that conversation. So at least that level of civility is still there. I just wanted to comment personally, not speaking for session, on how I came to my conclusion to vote for this. To me, we are all children of God. God made all of us. I believe He made certain people gay. That this is not a choice. This is not some decision that was made at some point in their life that they wanted a different lifestyle. That these people were made this way by God. And as children of God, we need to love our neighbors as ourselves. Now, the Bible says nothing about gay marriage. But for me, as a Christian, when Jesus was asked, what are the most important commandments? He could have said, well, all God's word are all the same. But He didn't. He answered, love your Lord God with all your might and love your neighbor. And there were no caveats. And I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus Christ first. That teaching got me to the position that I'm in now. And I just wanted to share that.
Very good. Thank you. I think what...
Thank you. My name is Eileen Lane. I've been in this church over 60 years, and I was even the speaking angel at one time in the Christmas pageant many years ago. And I think Florida said, once the speaking angel, always. But I really love this church, and I don't want to see division happen at all. And I think that is where I'm really concerned that this process has been very one-sided and not fully investigated. I'm a very intellectual person too. I was voted most intellectual female at Page High School at that time, and I have a great passion for books and also now for the Bible itself. I had a new birth experience back when I was about 37 years old, about, I guess, 83. And I can tell you more about that another time. And this church has played a great role, especially in good books in the library that have helped. I think we need to have more within the church where there are two opinions. we do need, and two strong feelings that some of us just know in our knowers that it's wrong, that this is an abomination. We think it is abomination that will make desolate, and that it has great potential for really just dividing, splitting the church in two, and many people who feel very strongly don't have much of a recourse in this. And I think we ought to be able to say that, you know, that we have maintained for a long time a balance between those who really live by every word of the Scripture in their lives and try to apply it, and those who have a more liberal viewpoint of it. And we have good discussion. But if you take, if too many who perceive, you know, that this could bring great judgment on the church, then many just read the Scripture and say, well, you know, we need to get out. And I don't want to see that happen. I really want to see a way for those who have stuck it out, and they really want to be a light in the darkness, you know, to be able to have some support from the leadership to be able to express their viewpoint in a way that can be heard. And I attended 2 of the different sessions, but I just felt like it was a slam dunk, that it really, I didn't have a chance. I love homosexuals. I've probably done more, I've done more to try to reach out, rent, you know, a home that I had, even owner finance it, and stay through their, you know, all the way through to when they got AIDS. And, you know, I've done tangibly good, you know, good things in showing love, but to sanction it within the church and say that, you know, we're from Genesis to Revelation, the church is built on families. And I have a PhD in child development and family relations, which, you know, because I really want to help in that area. And I have done a lot of research. I know that unions between persons of same sex are not nearly as stable as those of straight families. And they, you know, we have enough problems as it is. And I don't see why we can't just honor the fact that people get a union, you know, that is a civil union, or if pastors want to go and do it in the park outside or some other place across the street in the synagogue, but to leave God's house a house of prayer where we really devote ourselves to the big issues that are happening, such as what we have going on with the racial problems. We're just devoting a lot of attention to something that is very, you know, controversial, when we need to be focusing on really doing God's work.
I'm Will Porter, and I'll be very brief with this, but I come at things from a standpoint of a scientist and an engineer and medical, and I am very impressed with a series that was on the Discovery Channel called Brain Sex. Brain Sex. It's a 6-hour presentation, and it brings together, and I purchased this and have it if you ever want to borrow it, and it tells you all the medical findings about gender. And they have determined through studies during the 9-month gestation period of a human, the first thing that happens is whether you physically become male or female, and you develop the genitalia that goes with that. After after that comes a time when your brain develops whether you feel like a man or a woman. You've heard of people that say, I feel like I'm in the wrong body. You can actually develop in your brain a feeling that you should have been female but you're male, or vice versa. And the third thing they determine, and they pretty much know when it happens, is whether you develop a bonding feeling with a same-sex person or an opposite-sex person. And through studies, they found that mothers who are under great stress during their pregnancy period have a high proportion of gay people. For example, the mothers who went through the bombing in London during World War II ended up producing a high proportion of gay children. And they say the whole conclusion is this is medical. This is not a choice. This is not a lifestyle you come to by reasoning. This is medically developed in you as to whether you're going to have an attraction for a same-sex person or an opposite-sex person. I too believe that, this is all part of God's creation of humans. It's not something where human has changed something that God wanted.
Thank you. I think we need to close here. The time is up, and appreciate everybody coming. And these, if you do want this guideline, I'll leave these here. It's just one simple